There's a reason some couples quietly build wealth, while others constantly feel financially overwhelmed. And surprisingly, part of the answer may be cultural. Because in Japan, many couples approach money in ways that feel almost completely opposite to modern American life. Less consumption, less pressure to upgrade, less obsession with looking rich. And over time, those small differences quietly create radically different financial lives. In America, many couples are taught that success should look visible. Bigger homes, newer cars, luxury experiences, constant upgrades. But many Japanese couples follow a quieter rule, one that prioritizes stability, intentional living, and emotional peace over appearance. And today, we're diving into 10 quiet money habits Japanese couples use to build wealth, while most Americans continue ignoring them completely. And honestly, the deeper you look into these habits, the more modern spending culture starts feeling strangely exhausting. Now, before we begin, this isn't about saying Japan is perfect, and it's definitely not about pretending every Japanese couple handles money flawlessly. But culturally, there are certain financial behaviors in Japan that quietly encourage long-term stability instead of constant financial pressure. And what makes these habits so fascinating is that many of them seem almost small or unimportant at first. But over years, and sometimes decades, they create completely different emotional relationships with money. Because quietly building wealth is rarely about one dramatic decision. It's usually about small habits repeated consistently over time. In many modern cultures, income increases immediately trigger lifestyle upgrades. A better apartment, a newer car, more expensive restaurants, more subscriptions, more visible success. And emotionally, it feels natural. After all, if you work harder and earn more, shouldn't life instantly become more luxurious? But many Japanese couples approach this very differently. Instead of rapidly upgrading their lifestyle every time income increases, they often allow their savings and stability to grow first. And this creates something extremely powerful over time: financial breathing room. Because one of the biggest reasons couples feel financially trapped today is not low income. It's that every raise quietly becomes a permanent new expense. And eventually, the lifestyle grows faster than peace itself. And strangely, the next habit has almost nothing to do with income. It has to do with something far more emotional: the need to impress other people. One of the most interesting differences in Japanese financial culture is that visible luxury is often treated very differently. In many parts of modern American culture, success is expected to look obvious: luxury brands, large homes, constant upgrades, expensive lifestyles. But many Japanese couples place far less emotional importance on appearing wealthy. Not because they dislike nice things, but because social stability, simplicity, and long-term security are often valued more than visible financial status. And over time, this changes spending behavior dramatically. Because when people stop trying to constantly signal success, they quietly remove enormous financial pressure from their lives. And honestly, many financially stressed couples today are not just paying for products, they're paying for appearance. Now, the next habit may sound surprisingly simple, but psychologically, it's one of the most powerful habits in this entire video. In America, bigger often feels emotionally connected to better. Bigger homes, bigger kitchens, more rooms, more space. And for many couples, a larger home feels like proof that life is progressing. But in Japan, many couples grow up with a very different relationship to space. Smaller homes and apartments are often completely normalized. And surprisingly, This mindset quietly changes financial behavior in powerful ways. Smaller spaces naturally reduce unnecessary consumption, storage for excess purchases, pressure to constantly furnish and upgrade. And emotionally, smaller living often encourages intentionality. People become more selective, more mindful, more careful about what actually adds value to life. And financially, that restraint compounds over time in ways many people underestimate. A couple upgrades to a much larger home. At first, it feels exciting, but then come more furniture, more decorations, higher maintenance, higher taxes, higher expectations for how life should look. And slowly, the larger home quietly creates a larger financial identity to maintain. This is a huge one. Modern culture has normalized financing almost everything: phones, furniture, cars, appliances, vacations. And because monthly payments make purchases feel smaller emotionally, many couples slowly become surrounded by invisible financial obligations. But Japanese financial culture has historically been much more cautious around consumer debt, especially unnecessary debt. And that caution creates something many modern couples desperately need: lower emotional pressure. Because debt doesn't just affect money, it affects stress, flexibility, sleep, decision-making, relationship tension. And couples carrying less unnecessary debt often experience dramatically more financial calm over time. And the next habit might be one of the biggest reasons many Japanese couples quietly avoid lifestyle inflation altogether, because it changes the way they emotionally experience consumption itself. In many modern cultures, people are taught to associate success with visible progress: a newer car, a better phone, a more luxurious lifestyle. And over time, this creates a dangerous emotional cycle, where people constantly feel pressured to upgrade their lives in order to feel successful. But many Japanese couples grow up around a very different emotional framework. Stability itself is often deeply respected. Consistency, responsibility, long-term thinking, financial calm. And this changes something important psychologically. Success becomes less about impressing people and more about avoiding unnecessary instability. That mindset quietly reduces impulsive spending, comparison pressure, emotional consumption, lifestyle inflation. And honestly, many modern couples are financially exhausted, not because they lack income, but because they feel trapped in a culture that constantly tells them they should want more. Now, the next habit may seem extremely simple on the surface, but over decades, it quietly becomes one of the most powerful wealth-building behaviors of all. A lot of modern financial culture is built around emotional extremes: big purchases, luxury experiences, dramatic upgrades, impulse rewards. People chase financial excitement, but many Japanese couples tend to approach money more steadily: less emotional volatility, less financial impulsiveness, less obsession with dramatic lifestyle jumps. And over time, that consistency becomes incredibly powerful. Because wealth is usually not built through occasional moments of financial intensity. It's built through sustainable habits repeated quietly for years. And financially strong couples often understand something many people overlook. A calm financial life may feel less exciting in the short term, but it creates far more freedom in the long term. And interestingly, the next habit has become increasingly rare in modern life, especially in cultures driven by convenience and speed. In many parts of modern consumer culture, people are subtly taught that replacing something feels better than maintaining it. New feels exciting. Replacement feels easier. Upgrading feels emotionally satisfying. But in Japan, there's often a stronger cultural respect for maintenance, longevity, and taking care of possessions. And financially, this mindset changes everything over time, because constantly replacing things creates a hidden financial drain that many couples barely notice. Furniture, electronics, clothing, appliances. Small replacement habits quietly compound into enormous long-term spending. But couples who normalize maintenance instead of constant upgrading often build a completely different relationship with consumption. And emotionally, it also creates something surprisingly valuable: gratitude. Because when people stop constantly chasing newer versions of everything, they often become more satisfied with what they already have. A phone works perfectly fine, but after 2 years, modern culture starts making it feel old. Suddenly, a better camera, a newer model, a slightly faster version, begins creating emotional pressure to upgrade. And millions of couples quietly spend money solving problems they never actually had in the first place. This habit may be one of the biggest psychological differences of all. Modern culture constantly encourages immediacy. Buy now, upgrade now, experience now, enjoy now. And emotionally, that messaging is incredibly persuasive. But many Japanese couples are culturally more comfortable waiting, saving first, planning carefully, delaying purchases, thinking long term. And while that may sound simple, it dramatically changes financial outcomes over time. Because delayed gratification protects couples from countless emotional purchases that later become financial pressure. And perhaps more importantly, it teaches something modern consumer culture often weakens: the ability to separate temporary desire from long-term value. Now, the next habit is fascinating because at first glance, it almost sounds unrelated to wealth, but emotionally, it may be one of the deepest habits in this entire video. One of the most exhausting parts of modern financial culture is that many people slowly begin tying their self-worth to their financial image. The house, the car, the lifestyle, the vacations, the visible appearance of success. And over time, money stops being just a tool. It becomes identity. And when identity becomes attached to spending, financial pressure quietly becomes emotional pressure too. Because now every financial decision feels personal. Every downgrade feels embarrassing. Every comparison feels threatening. Every financial setback feels like failure. But many Japanese couples grow up with a somewhat different emotional relationship to status and personal identity. In many cases, there's simply less pressure to constantly express individuality through consumption. And psychologically, that creates something extremely powerful: freedom from performative spending. Because couples who don't feel emotionally required to constantly look successful often spend far less energy trying to prove something financially. And over years, that emotional freedom quietly compounds into financial freedom too. And finally, the number one habit may be the quietest one of all, because it doesn't really look impressive from the outside, but over decades, it changes almost everything. This may be the deepest lesson hidden inside many Japanese money habits. In modern culture, people are often taught to chase visible success. More upgrades, more luxury, more consumption, more proof that life is improving. But many Japanese couples quietly prioritize something very different: stability, balance, emotional calm, sustainability. And financially, that mindset changes everything. Because couples who prioritize peace over performance often make very different decisions over time. They avoid unnecessary pressure. They resist emotional consumption. They become careful with long-term obligations. They spend with more intentionality. They protect financial breathing room. And perhaps most importantly, they stop building lifestyles designed mainly to impress other people. Because eventually, many financially strong couples realize something modern culture rarely says out loud. A peaceful financial life is far more valuable than a performative one. And honestly, that may be one of the quietest forms of wealth that exists today. And by the way, if you and your partner are trying to become more intentional with money, lifestyle, and long-term goals, I actually created a simple couple financial planner plus vision board system inspired by many of the ideas we talk about on this channel. It's designed to help couples organize their financial future visually and emotionally, together. If that sounds helpful for where you are right now, you can find it below in the description. At the beginning of this video, we talked about how some couples quietly build wealth, while others constantly feel financially overwhelmed. And now you can probably see why. Because wealth is rarely just about income. It's about culture, habits, emotional pressure, lifestyle expectations, and the invisible rules people absorb from the world around them. And perhaps that's why so many of these Japanese money habits feel surprisingly powerful. Not because they promise fast wealth, but because they quietly protect something modern life is slowly draining from many couples: financial peace. And in a world constantly pushing people to spend more, upgrade faster, and perform success louder, that kind of peace may actually be one of the rarest forms of wealth left. Before you go, I'm genuinely curious. Which of these Japanese money habits do you think would be hardest for most Americans to adopt? And if you enjoy these kinds of conversations about money, psychology, culture, and modern life, consider subscribing. Because this channel isn't about flashy wealth, it's about building a life that quietly feels better.